Hi, everybody. Welcome. It is another stream. I'm going to be talking to you about Ben Zweibelson a lot this time, but we're going to be continuing on connecting it to Hegelian e-girls. And the topic, of course, that I promised was e-girl war. So we'll get into how all this relates. There's also a lot more to say about, of course, Grimes, in particular, Misanthropocene. Which is something that I want to focus on. I think, I think it has everything. It all enmeshes together. I mean, let's think. You could think about Grimes or Claire J, for example, as an e-girl, electronic music girl, or something. We can also think about this in the context of war. I mean, Grimes, for example, association, of course, with Elon Musk, taking their interest in world affairs to the next level, and a lot of interesting things. For example, actually becoming pregnant, becoming an e-woman, if you will. Of course, it's something that I mentioned in the companion piece. I believe everyone's agender, so whatever you want to call it. So, oh right, I have to decide which one. So I always do this wrong, which is classic. Let's see. We'll go right over to whatever the tab it is that has Misanthropocene on it. We'll go right over here. So we'll start with this, jumping into Ben Zweibelson immediately afterwards. How about that? So the reason why I connect Misanthropocene with all this is just that Misanthropocene is a really important album to me. I think this is, I've said before, this is sort of a Hegelian statement that Misanthropocene is the reason why there are albums. Like, not even, like, I think it's the greatest album, put it that way, but I mean, there's no real reason. I haven't heard that many albums, so. But, it's my favorite album, put it that way. Misanthropocene is my favorite. And you could put it like, for me, it's just like, I'm so happy. Basically, I'm so happy albums exist so that this can be an album. In a way, it's a concept album, for example. So, like, there are new gods. I think that we can tie this really immediately into something that I was talking about at a different time. So I don't know if I do this. Oh, I haven't been showing you. That's embarrassing. But I want to show a different one. I forget who that was. That was somebody else, maybe associated with philosophy. I'm not sure. Anyway, I just want to do one that has only one tab open. So I was talking about Only a God Can Save Us, right, by Martin Heidegger. No, I don't want to switch to tab. Sorry. So here we have the interview, right? Only a God Can Save Us is an interview by Hegel. So if you look at, right, the lyrics to New Gods by Grimes, you have AZ lyrics is a good one. They don't have a bunch of links everywhere. I also want to be pulling up this. This helps us transition into Zweibelson, because Zweibelson actually refers to Elon Musk in a pretty funny way. Like, Ben Zweibelson, Ben Zweibelson probably follows Musk on Twitter. That what's actually also funny is that this becomes like parasocial, or it's like, I don't know, this or social. I don't know. We can everything's para these days, but yeah, I wonder. I guess I could check by going on Elon's account. See which of the people I follow Elon Musk. You have muted. See, followed by Ben Zweibelson and two others, Dimitri. Okay, but other ones don't. That's great. Doesn't really matter. Everybody's part of God, of course, or whatever. Everybody's part of the story, the overall story. So this isn't loading for some reason. This is most disagreeable. But the point is, you have Only a God Can Save Us. And then in New Gods, I mean, the whole lyrics is really great. I think Grimes or Claire Elise Boucher is underrated as a lyricist. I feel most comfortable saying Miss Boucher. So if you're okay with that. Anyway, I think Miss Boucher is underrated as a lyricist. You're All I Know. I have a tendency where I always compare love songs to religious songs. It's actually a common trope. Basically, God is the beloved. It's more in like mysticism. It's hard to like, yeah. I mean, in Sufi poetry, for example. So in like mystic poetry, there's like a elision, so like a going between of the lover or the beloved person and God. It's also related to it's funny to connect with simps because the Nikki, the return to Hegel person right here, tweeted today about simps that I responded to. It's a long time ago at this point. See, reject simps. They are never principled. But comparing that to, what is it? It's bhakti yoga, right? Which I think is like devotion, right? But I mean, so people have made this a cornerstone of religion. So it's like the idea of being devoted to an avatar, a deity, versus being devoted to a person. Anyway, like that has everything to do with how it makes sense to me. Other classic songs, for example, in this category for me are Everywhere by Michelle Branch. I think I've already pointed out these lyrics in these streams. If you know you've been doing your homework, but turn it inside out so I can see. That's basically what I do on these streams. I turn myself inside out so you can see the part of me that's drifting over you and everything like that. But see, I think this song, you can easily think about this song as being about God or being about the divine, basically. I do, in general, have an issue. I do like mysticism or whatever. I have an issue with the idea of addressing God as you. But I mean, in a sense, anytime we use the second person, we're doing that as an appellation. So there would be an interesting political, I don't know if it would be a political campaign. It'd be funny to try and abolish the second person because it's like offensive anyway. We'd have to be very far along the dialectic of recognition in order to do that. Although we do need to come back to how allegedly the dialectic of recognition is overrated. We need to remember this. Anyway, so away from me. I don't know. You're everything I know that makes me believe. You can just see how, like, you can imagine this being about God. Anyway, another one I like to think of is, I mean, this is not exactly related. I have thought about this as being to capitalism, but of course, my official position is that I don't really believe in capitalism. So, like, we would have to pick something else. But this idea of I knew you were trouble, I guess I would say I just came up with this term today called militarity. So the same way that in this as well, Heidegger, it's not loading. This is so weird. This is so weird. Like, why doesn't that work? English text. Does this work? Oh, but it's the same, isn't it? It's the same link. Anyway, this is what I was trying to show you, right? Only a God can save us. I didn't need the whole link because it relates very directly to a lyric in Grimes, right? Where she says, only brand new gods can save me, right? What's interesting here is like the singular and the plural. So here it says only a God. Heidegger is saying one God, right? So A is always a pernicious thing. It's like having a war. That's why that is again in conversation with my awesome concept of Your Holiness, awesome speech. My awesome concept of militaricity. But again, we have Heidegger's always talking about technicity, so technic, which we might also call technology. So right, it's not just technology; it's technicity, right? And it's not just war; it's militaricity, which is to say, technology is not about one technology or another. There is a general problem of technology, right? So like, it's not like someone was just talking. I'm just arguing with somebody on Reddit, for example, about nuclear weapons, and like China's building more nuclear weapons, and it's like, is that something to be worried about? Well, maybe, but like. The issue is not like whether like the one technology of nuclear weapons and how many bombs there are, whatever. Like we're using all forms of technology currently to attack each other, again in line with what I'm always calling the Hobbesian trap. So yeah, I really want to stay in this window because that's the only one I'm sharing, right? So, I mean, what I see is just a structural feature is that we have a Hobbesian trap, which means we basically have warlords. We have my contention, if you want to believe that war exists, like I think instead of talking about different forms of government, I would talk about the important ways in which all forms of government are stratocracies. And like, it's important to say that the way that I understand this is not paranoid, because I think a lot of people will say things like, the military is secretly in charge or whatever. And that's bad. And in a way, like, it has a lot to do with the social challenges that we face right now. Like, I think what we have to do has everything to do with, the technicity, right? The secrets of technology. And why do we want to use technology to hobble each other, control each other, or harm each other? Anyway, so all governments are stratocracies because, like, what we call a government, again, we're back to a, right? only a god, right? Only a god. It's the same way that, like, for a lot of people, only a state, right? A state, right? But you don't want governmentality. You got to turn into an icity, right? I don't know. Governmenticity doesn't sound right, but that's what you want, right? You don't want a government. A government. There is no a government. There is no a war. Like I think that we are mistaken when we think about, there's World War II, there's the Gulf War, there's the Vietnam War. So a and the as articles, right, are both words that signal that the next word is like this singular, discrete, okay, now singular, discrete thing, right? And now we are breaking into Zweibelson, right? Let's see. No, that's not enough. Ben Zweibelson, what a mensch, right? Like, I've talked about this before. Zweibelson, I just want to show his picture, or their picture. So we'll do this through Google. Oh no! Ben Zweibelson, right? Is a person. Oh, that's funny, but like, check this out. Is that one of Ben Zweibelson? One of them? I don't know. Anyway, now we go over to Bilder. I'm half German, by the way. That's why that's in German. I'm on my mom's computer, though. So this is Ben Zweibelson. Check out that beard. Very, very, very nice. Ben Zweibelson currently rocks a bit of a more, I don't know, have they shaved? I'm not sure. Anyway, you can find more. Ben Zweibelson does a lot of like video interviews. So, I mean, this is something to check out, I guess. Someone should make a playlist of Ben Zweibelson interviews. I'm sorry. I should make a playlist. I take personal responsibility for making the YouTube playlist of Ben Zweibelson videos. Anyway, I'm typing B Zweibelson. Let's see here. Ben. Oh, the other thing that's interesting about Zweibelson, because we're talking about Zweibelson and Hegel, right? The Hegelian e-girls, right? So Zweibelson is similar. Okay, so in terms of where the name comes from, I can show you my the sources on this. It's so convenient to be able to talk in an uninterrupted monologue and just search up the things. Not that prove what I'm saying. Like, I'm not, whatever. This is all interpretation. This is just creating lore. This is fan fiction for the universe, right? This is like, take it in that spirit. Anyway, Zweibelson, etymology. I don't know if I've showed you to Etym Online. This site apparently doesn't have it, but this one's amazing. So what would be one that I think is good? I mean, Gen is such a good like word root. So like Etym Online. I'm trying to show you this even though it doesn't work. So like Gene, my goodness. Look at this. Look at this. Cosmogony, right? Not cosmology, but cosmogony. That's pretty good. Theory of the creation. Not bad. Impregnate. What I'm talking about is these words are connotatively laden. Okay, genital, right? Genius. Hello, genocide. Ever heard of it? Generous, Genesis. I mean, it's genre. Ho, right? Like Renaissance. I'm sorry. And then like Wunderkind for some reason, but like kind in general. Kind in general is a big one in terms of class. Wow. Wow. Doing a lot of work here. But again, Proto-Indo-European, we're going to have to talk about that when we talk because far rightism is never too far away. Like Proto-Indo-European is basically like what people were calling the Aryan race, right? The Aryan race is supposedly like the Proto-Indo-European anyway. It's a big mess. But so obviously I'm getting sidetracked and just brought up Nazism. So times are tough. But anyway, I'm trying to show you the etymology of Zweibelson. I don't know if I can do that. But the one that I was going to show you, basically, it said that it comes from Zwiebel. So in German, there's a word Zwiebel, right? I wonder if because I'm in German land, like it'll work. I don't know. It's in English. So I also did it wrong. So there's Zwiebel, right? Is onion. So I think some people say like if you're Zwiebel, it's like you're saying Zweibelson, and then that somehow got changed to Zweibelson, right? Which means that you're probably like descended from onion farmers. But what I'm trying to show you is that there's also a word called Zweifel. So we'll go to Google, go to translate. So Zweifel, oops, right, is doubt. Hello. And then there's also Verzweifel, which is despair. Oh God, right? So very interesting, I think. I mean, I don't really, this is like a theory cell, I guess, to pick up a term from that article. This is a theory cell version of astrology or whatever. Although, whatever, there's no disrespect to people who like astrology. Anyway, Zweifel, doubt, anyway, cool stuff going on there. But so what I wanted to bring up is that this whole idea of like a god, right? Oops, it's still not loaded. A god, right? I was trying to talk about the problematizing this, the idea of the definite article, right? Or I guess this is also an indefinite article. Just articles in general, verboten, right? Because these are basically saying that there's a discrete entity, right? That which in many cases is not to say a misunderstanding, but like that ain't Brad, right? So let's see. Yeah, right. This is so great. I love this. So this is where Ben Zweibelson is talking about the Newtonian understanding of reality. This is in the very beginning of Ben Zweibelson's book, or at least the beginning of chapter 1 after the introduction, called Beyond the Pale, Designing Military Decision-Making Anew. This is a really cool book. I mean, I'm not just giving it a blanket endorsement, but it's very informative. Like the fact that Ben Zweibelson exists is highly interesting in the world. So again, we're talking about what do we have? Where are they? Excuse me, Nikita Hegelian. Elon Musk. No. So I have been blocked by Ben Zweibelson before, just so you know. So it might happen again. We'll see. I just CC'd in, who did I CC in? The Office Director of National Intelligence. So, I mean, what are you going to do? So, yeah, but Ben Zweibelson, right, has a few books out, right? So there's Understanding the Military Design Movement. So, I mean, I've posted, oh, no, it's been reposted since then. But, like, maybe this is, no. Meh. Anyway, I have like responded to that. Anyway, I posted it on archive.org. So we can go search that up. This is also just a classic advertisement for my subreddit, which I can remember the name of because I'm just killing it. So within this, I want to search design movement. Oh, I also have a handy dandy what is it called? Like you can search by categories, right? And I have a whole category for Ben Zweibelson, just like I have a whole category for Grimes. You know, go team. Oh, maybe that's all I needed to do. So I'm just trying to show you this. So in this document is a book by Ben Zweibelson, which is really interesting. Like part of the history that Ben Zweibelson goes into is that military design, as Ben Zweibelson understands it, has to do with this person called Nave, who was in the Israeli army. So there's it's almost like a boogeyman. I'm almost thinking like a bedtime a ghost you tell around the campfire of the radical left or whatever, about how like the Israeli army will like go through walls because they read Deleuze, something like this. So I mean, there's something walking through wall. I mean, there's like this is basically an association, right? So that like the Israeli army or something has been reading radical philosophy, right? And so when I go on critical theory, like many subreddits, I'll post subreddits or post subreddits. I'll post on subreddits like critical theory, our critical theory, and be like, hey, look, Ben Zweibelson is doing critical theory like in the army. That's interesting. And people will just be like, oh, that sucks. Like it sucks that, you know, like the enemy from these people's perspective, right, is looking at philosophy. So again, that has everything again to do with you know, the Hegelian e-girls, right? So we can see again, it's like, I mean, within this narrative that I'm talking about, you know, this sort of what do we say, speculative philosophy, philosopher, yeah, philosopher. And guess what Ben Zweibelson says? Is it the same first word? Philosophy of conflict. But there's other maybe this is the change. And LinkedIn, it still says philosopher of conflict, but we'll see, because we leave no stone unturned on this podcast. Okay, we will Google anything what we have to. Oh dear. See, look, philosopher of conflict, but author comes first. So anyway, we're talking here. I'm trying to show you this thing from, well, here in Whale Songs, we can show like Elon Musk's. He's talking about basically the power of computers in this passage. Talking about Elon Musk, which again, Elon Musk obviously relates to Miss Boucher, which relates back to Misanthropocene. And then there's a lot. Okay, then like Misanthropocene, just to like continue on and keep putting more balls into play. That's basically just like, this is a really simple one, like grand style. Like once I came across this is very similar to again, the Gesamtkunstwerk, which is again the total work of art, right? So again, both of these things are also, I don't know, like a lot of people would find them problematic, right? Because the aestheticization of politics or whatever is fascism. But like what I'm basically saying is that you need to be like developing grand style and grand styles, like basically developing entirely worked out like artistic interventions is the currency of the future, basically. So that's basically where we're going, and it relates, you know, as Zweibelson talks about, to phantasmal war. It's just an amazing concept, you know, war becoming phantasmal, right? And then, so in the same way that, you know, this phantasmality, right, shit's getting weird, right? Or as, you know, Baudrillard might say, you know, reality is decaying, right? So, you know, we're slipping to dream time, right? As Baudrillard would say. So let's see here. I think I can pull this up. We're slipping into the dream time. This is one of Baudrillard's references in The Transparency of Evil. And he's referring, obviously, I mean, out of date, but I mean, Baudrillard, I mean, they're a dead white male, quote unquote, or whatever, but, you know, not just anyone. Anyway, everybody's, not all. Anyway, the dreaming, right? Also referred to as the dream, is from Aboriginal Australian cosmogony, right? But see, cosmogony is an interesting thing because it almost, like, what does the term creation presume, right? Does creation presume that there's a process that then finishes? and then creation is over, and then there is the creation, there is what has been created, or can anything ever be fully created? I wonder quietly to myself. That's a Ron White reference, I want to say, where he's like, you can't shoot people in the back, and he's like, I'll shoot them in the leg, and then they'll be like, who shot me? I wonder quietly to myself. Anyway, Dreamtime, right? So, I mean, Baudrillard's commenting on Bruce Chatwin's song lines. I guess we might as well pull that up. You can tell why I never get anywhere. But, like, the thing is, all of this stuff, it like, everything is a metonymy of the name God. So, like, everything I'm talking about is the exact same thing. So I'm just going from thing to thing, and there is ultimately a point. So if you can grasp that, congratulations. Anyway, so I'm not going to dwell on this, but basically just to establish, like, this is a book by an apologist or something like that. Oh, combining fiction and nonfiction. So anyway, more of a layman, but somebody like talking about traveling through Australia, talking about their cultures, or, you know, talking with Aboriginals and being confused about, you know, whether the Aboriginals, maybe they're putting on the tourists, right? They're trying to make money. So they're just saying whatever they, you know, playing into whatever stereotype or telling them about the dream time that they think is going to help get them money. So it's like they're operationalizing, it's sort of like the subsumption of, you know, cosmology into commerce, or, you know, some other sort of selfish motive. But there's also, even beneath that, just this idea of basically duplicity. You know, it's like they're not going to tell you what they really think. And that's just a fundamentally frustrating aspect of sociality. So it's like you can have all the power in the world, right? Here come, I mean, not the Australians, but these Anglos, right? Have nuclear weapons and doing all this shit. But it's like, do you know what the Aboriginals mean by the Dreamtime? Like, or whatever? Like, maybe not. And maybe that's not something that you can get through power. Something like this. Anyway, that's also not really the point. The point is not that the Aboriginals have some sort of cultural capital that is inaccessible. The more interesting thing is that, you know, Baudrillard claims that that revenge, so the revenge of the colonized, is in no sense the reappropriation by Indians or Aboriginals of their lands, privileges, or autonomy. That is our victory. So, I mean, in some senses, this is still contested, but in terms of like the core territories, there's like Washington, D.C., like being liberated, like, you know, I think we're liberated, right? Like, whatever does that, you know, won't just be, I don't know, we'll say it'll be more complicated regardless. Indians or Aboriginals of their lands, privileges, or autonomy. And again, sorry, I gotta keep breaking in. Like, in terms of the specific land of Washington, D.C., the specific locales, the land where the Utah data center is, right? The idea that it has to be, like, redeemed or something. That, I mean, this goes back to another Baudrillard quote that I already referenced, but in the Mirror of Production, at the end, where Baudrillard's talking about how everything is already there in its, what does he say? Like, in its symbolic exigency or something like this. Oh, it's actually not the first. It's symbolic exigency. Perfect. So it regards every man and every society already totally there. So this is a critique of alienation. So without alienate, it's basically a critique of the idea of bondage. It's a like, which I think actually is very connected to Epictetus and the Enchiridion. So I'd also like to see this be brought into, you know, the discussion basically around Hegel and e-girls and whatever. Like, let's see if we can make this happen. It's not the one that I'm familiar with. I would like a different one, please. Basically, there's a part of the Enchiridion where Epictetus is saying that if you can basically not give a fuck, then you are the master of everyone. Because nobody, in my words, nobody can defy your will, because your will doesn't impose any limits on their freedom. So I guess it's a sort of answer to the problem of negative freedom, where it's like, like, this is actually, yeah, actually quite profound and resonate within my philosophy, because I think it it basically resonates with the idea of like understanding that you're already open to penetration. So, for example, in cognitive warfare, you can be influenced. Like, there's no way for us to have complete control. It's not necessarily an affair which is up to us. Is this it? Yeah. So, right, as Epictetus writes, right, he is master of every other person. Again, forgive Epictetus for the gendering. I'm sorry. Okay, so he is the master of every other person who is able to confer or remove whatever that person wishes either to have or to avoid. Whoever then would be free, let him wish nothing. Let him decline nothing, which depends on others, else he must necessarily be a slave. I guess he's really saying somebody else will be your master if you... Yeah, I guess he's not quite exactly going the whole way as far as I'm concerned. But Epictetus is saying that if you wish something, like if you make specific demands, right? This also, again, relates to the idea of karma yoga. And there's also a way, it's funny because like in terms of the question of like, is the recognition dialectic overrated? Karma yoga is also something that people can say is overrated. The whole idea that, we do things in the world in order to like learn stuff. Like some people is like, no, you don't have to do it that way. I don't know. Or like you do that and then you do something else, the way in which a lot of monks just go to the mountains, right? Or something. But, different strokes for different folks. That's my ultimate idea. But so let's see. Exactly right here. Of the classical paths to spiritual liberation in Hinduism, and again, we have to put Hinduism as another. We've put all words in quotation marks, especially Hinduism. Like there's a lot of things. Like it's not one thing basically, and even choosing the one label Hindu, it's political. Anyway, karma yoga is the path of unselfish action. It teaches that a spiritual seeker should act according to dharma, without being attached to the fruits or personal consequences. This is the point. Without being attached to the fruits or personal consequences. That relates now here to whoever then would be free, let him wish nothing, let him decline nothing, which depends on others, else he must necessarily be a slave. So anything which depends on others or anything which is not, Epictetus says some things are in our control. So I think this is a false binary between things that are and are not within our control. But in terms of the degree to which we seem to be making choices, right? And that seems to be, something that we're doing. Things are more or less under our influence. So as Epictetus is saying, whatever are our own actions, okay? And then there are things that are not in our control. But then, the way, according to Epictetus, right? But I think it's more interesting to talk about in a way that's right. But people have a very, what is there to say? Like we don't think about just the middle period of our influence or whatever. So like a concrete way of explaining this is that, we can we can choose to make certain things our affair, right? So in terms of, I talk about militaricity or technicity or like the interpretation of Grimes or Heidegger or Ben Zweibelson, or Jean Baudrillard. Like I have made these things into my affair and now in terms of what I am saying, these are my own actions. Right. And so in terms of the choice of the things that I concern myself with and that I express myself about, that's my affair. Right. And then but think about like Neo at the end of the Matrix. Right. There's actually multiple phone calls, but basically the call to the machines. Right. Like Neo is talking to the machines and basically says like what happens next is something that I leave in your hands. Right. Let's see if I don't want to play the where we go from here is a choice I leave to you, right? That's one of the important gestures that anybody really has to make. It's like ultimately, especially if you're going to die or whatever, like ultimately you need to pass the baton, right? And you need to understand that, other people are going to do things and like that's going to affect you or something. Anyway. Boop. So what else are we talking about? We're very full. We're talking about a lot of things. Anyway, so Baudrillard's talking about the dream time and basically talking about the West is falling into like, I also compare it to like psychedelia. It's like the West or whatever we think reality is. It's like we're coming up on an acid trip. Like Donald Trump being president. Donald Trump being president is like, it's like acid. It's like, this can't be real. this has been going on. It's like when 9/11 happened. People were like, this looks like something from a movie. Like, what's happening? And so I think in general, like, that is the case. Like, things are getting weirder. And then, so that's expressing itself in Ben Zweibelson, as well as the e-girls, or the Hegelian e-girls. I forget how, just beyond the pale. I wanted to talk about discrete. Yeah. But then also, like, the Hegelian e-girls represent, like, I'm basically saying philosophy. Like, Hegel, I'm saying, is like a psychedelic philosopher. Like, I was talking with somebody else about, like, there's no mistake or something. Like, it's very interesting that Hegel is the one that got paired with the e-girl, right? Because Hegel has this connotation of, old white guy, right? Colonial, also German, right? So, I mean, going full just Western civilization establishment in a way. But on the other hand, Hegel's like, Hegel's like, he's very trippy. Like, the whole idea of dialectics, like, shit is melting into each other. Hegel, like, it's not the Kantian e-girls, but it's also not like, the Bataillean e-girls or the Baudrillardian e-girls or the Nietzschean e-girls. Hello, it's Hegel, because Hegel is also early enough that Hegel's not too directly associated with the right and left extremisms of the 20th century, or more to the point, Hegel's associated with them both, but also to the level where Hegel's obscure enough, maybe because of being old. Like, Hegel's less famous than Nietzsche. So Nietzsche has very strong connotations and also lived later, so that the will to power or whatever it seemed much more directly inspirational to National Socialism. And of course, I don't know, have you ever heard of it? National Socialism kind of gave a bad name to everything that was associated with it, understandably. So Friedrich Nietzsche suffered anyway. So why is it Hegel? Is what I'm saying. It's like this part of the Western canon establishment or whatever. It's like this white, like, understanding Hegel would be like, it's in the context again where the philosophy's melting into the technology, because again, it's like, Heidegger's not wrong, even though he supported the Nazi Party and, like, worked for the Nazi Party and everything. Like, people keep going back to Heidegger, even Afro pessimists, all kind of people, like, for many reasons, for good and bad. I don't know, that I don't even fully understand. But, like, when Heidegger's talking, I think about technicity, basically the basic problem of our confrontation with technology. I mean, I think that is a good thing to focus on. And to focus on it in general. Like, it's almost like, it's like this huge grand problem that we have to be responding to. It's like it's important to keep, like, this overall context. I would actually compare it. I was just thinking about Heidegger's concept of rootedness, which is very problematic because it's associated with his with their anti-Semitism. Heidegger, because it's the whole idea of, like, being rooted in a place. But there's also just the idea that you need to be rooted in your proper context, right? So what counts as local, for example? Like, we might say, oh, my locale, Atlanta or whatever. But, like, if some alien comes, then the locale, like, they might come from a different universe with different laws of physics or whatever. So, like, then my locale would be defined by this is again related to Hume talking about meeting a person in general on the moon. And also symptomatically reading, like, meeting a European in China. I guess, where would it be? It would be in the treatise. I wonder if this comes up with that on archive. Or Gutenberg. Yeah, so we love company in general, but it is as we love any other amusement. An Englishman in Italy is a friend. A European in China, and perhaps a man, would be beloved as such if we were to meet him on the moon. But this proceeds only from the relation to ourselves, which in these cases gathers force by being confined to a few persons. But as Hume is pointing out, right, how related somebody is to us has to do with our state of mind, how we're, the context in which that's being evaluated. Anyway, so this rootedness, like, what does it mean to be in your context? So I actually think to be thinking about the overall systemic logic of the moment, that's an important part of rootedness. So, like, I've been thinking about it because I was born in Germany, we moved to America. So like, is Atlanta my place? What is my relation to where I was born? You know, that's very interesting. It's very weird. Like, because it was like my family didn't move because of a war or any, I mean, in a large sense, you know, but like, but not immediately. Anyway, very interesting. So also right around the time of the unification, like that, we were like, oh, that's a good time to leave Germany. Anyway, Heidegger, rootedness. So rootedness in this technicity issue. Basically, I would say the problem of technicity and militaricity, because militaricity is basically the logic of Hobbesian trap. Hobbesian trap, you know, again, maybe I should talk about this like in, a little bit in detail. Right. So the Hobbesian trap, or Schelling's dilemma, is a theory that explains why preemptive strikes occur between two groups out of bilateral fear of an imminent attack. Without outside influences, this situation will lead to a fear spiral. You can talk about catch-22, vicious circle, or Nash equilibrium. That's something from game theory, which basically means, it's strategically correct for everybody to hurt each other because they can't expect a better outcome if they don't hurt others. Because if you, I was just seeing somebody saying on Reddit, you know, it seems like violent, warlike societies will outcompete, quote unquote, you know, a peaceful society because they don't have weapons, right? Which just makes them sitting ducks for people who have weapons. But the issue is that basically this logic, extrapolated to artificial intelligence, for example, is very easy to explain. That, you know, in the pursuit, we're so afraid that other people, or whoever you are, right? You can be so afraid that somebody else will make an artificial intelligence weapon that's going to kill you, right? And render all your defenses moot. Right? So you're so afraid of that of course you need to develop your own artificial intelligence or whatever it is, or you need to kill them all, right? Before they do it. Right? And so, but they can also be thinking the same way. And so once this is happening, it leads to a situation where it seems like conflict and destruction is inevitable until like this is assuaged, right? Until people feel safe. And so what we call peace is when there's not a like overwhelming bubbling over of this mutual distrust that exists between individuals, different groups, what we call states, right? Up to any scale you want. This distrust problem is a fundamental issue. Anyway, so especially with artificial intelligence, basically you're hedging risk. And with artificial intelligence, and this is something that Ben Zweibelson talks about, like this is what, I mean, there's beyond the pale, but then there's, right, the Singleton paradox. Singleton paradox, right? Like this is an essay by Ben Zweibelson. And the whole point about it is that, you know, I wonder how many times lose control. Oh, lose control doesn't come up. That's interesting. Human controlled. Okay, so like for example here, while existential fears abound with human controlled weapons of mass destruction, again, because weapons of mass destruction is basically what I call disruptive technology, which is a known term, but I don't think it doesn't have like a Wikipedia page, unfortunately. Oh, it does. Disruptive innovation. So like disruptive innovation, I mean, but this is couched in economic terms. But like you could, like the tank, right, in warfare, or nuclear weapons, nuclear weapons is like the quintessential like example of disruptive innovation because of this thing called nuclear deterrence. I don't know if you've heard of it, but like nuclear deterrence makes this idea of deterrence like a dominant strategy, right, in world relations. So fundamentally, you're not winning the conflict by having it. You're winning by, you know, as they say in Dr. Strangelove, inducing the fear to attack. Yeah, definition of deterrence. Defines deterrence when he says, deterrence is the art of producing in the mind of the enemy the fear to attack. Note that deterrence is an art, not a science. This is because deterrence requires fear. How and whether one can produce fear depends not just on one's own capabilities and resolve, but also on the adversary's values and emotional state, hence mind. Influencing others' minds is an art, in part because determining what others value and feel is not a science. Dr. Strangelove might have added that deterrence works when the fear to attack is sufficient to prevent the attack. But again, of course, I mean, it's not a science, but people try to be as systematic as possible about it. And like, there's nothing more worth pouring resources into, right? So that gets you into, you know what I mean, like psychological operations. Basically, this as again back to like non-kinetic. I mean, in a way, non-kinetic, right? This is obviously can be connected with kinetic things all the time. But like, you know, the whole idea of not like or like winning without fighting, I think something Sun Tzu talked about, right? This person's arguing against that, but it's established, right? That's the one thing that so talk about winning without fighting, right? But what is fighting, right? What counts as fighting? Psychological operations, United States. Okay, everybody has psyops. In a way, you know, psychological operations and deterrence. I mean, that is related to like I don't know what you call this, but like bears, like a battle display, something like this. There should be like pictures of them. But you know, like when a bear gets up on, like when an animal, or like when you, you know, they say when you, I don't know if you when you see a bear, but like a cougar or whatever, you know, you like have a jacket, you make yourself look big, or like the king cobra, right? It's shit flares up or whatever. Like what is going on there? That's very similar to like it's not like deception, right? But it's an influence operation. It's not even necessarily deception, but it's like what's more sometimes what's more important is not like whether you can kill the other person, but what is the other person's state of mind. So like maybe you'd win the fight, right? You're the bear, right? You'll win the fight against the other bear, but you'll get maimed in the process. Maybe you'll be mortally wounded, right? Maybe you'll die too, right? So it's better for you to not fight, which is obviously related to nuclear deterrence. Hello, ever heard of it? But anyway, so like disruptive innovation plus Hobbesian trap leads to the situation where you know you're worried about human controlled weapons of mass destruction because people will want to hurt each other because they're afraid that other people will want to hurt them as well. And again, this applies not just to weapons of mass destruction, but like how we use words, right? There's a whole thing in it's part of ahimsa and harsh words. There should be like something in particular about this. I'm bad at this, by the way. Like I am susceptible to using harsh words. So let me just go ahead and acknowledge that and apologize. A sweeping apology. Probably have to give infinite apologies before time resets. But yeah. So in Gandhi's thought, right, ahimsa precludes not only the act of inflicting a physical injury, but also mental states like evil thoughts and hatred, and unkind behavior such as harsh words, dishonesty, and lying. All she saw as manifestations of violence incompatible with ahimsa. I mean, yeah. I mean, ethics is a tough thing, but I mean, ultimately, you're like trying to do the best thing possible, right? You're trying to be a good person here, right? And everybody compromises on that to one degree or another, and like those compromises lead to a lot of issues. But the also like an issue is to say like it's not just that everybody's compromised it, but like they have to create a compromised social situation, which can only, you know, it requires a group effort to put together, and it's not about scapegoating any one group. Anyway, Zweibelson's talking about ultimately the issue is with artificial intelligence as a disruptive technology, the Hobbesian trap, right? In terms of our risk calculus, we're not just worried about human error or that people will use it on purpose. You know, with nuclear weapons, you know, the issue is what if, you know, it's happened many times. So it's like, people don't know whether a first strike has happened or not, and now they're choosing whether or not to respond, right? Or let's say nuclear weapons go off by accident, or some suicidal person who's just crazy, like, or whatever, like, does it, right? But with artificial intelligence, you now in a way have to worry that like the bomb will choose by itself to use itself. Like with a nuclear weapon, ultimately, you it doesn't choose to do things. I think it might be. It wouldn't be here. It might be in dangled, this other one. More becoming phantasmal. No, not that one. Whale songs. It could be in this one. Right. So he says, like, while today's semi-autonomous cruise missile cannot suddenly decide to go study poetry or join an anti-war protest, future AI systems in the decades to come will not be bounded by such limitations. Past revolutions in warfare involved sociological transformations that legacy mode of human a newer, more lethal, faster, yet still human-centered warfare process. The upcoming revolution in artificial intelligence and human-machine teaming in warfare may become the last revolution that humans will start, and possibly one that they are unable to finish or influence the path beyond what they can conceptualize or articulate at whale song speeds. Right? So now this also leads into this idea like conceptualization, right? The art of conceptualization is becoming very important. So like, what are the concepts that you're going to use with your AI systems? So that's why conceptual art is already a thing. But like, I think the usual definition of conceptual art could be a little bit restrictive, but this gives you an idea, right? Conceptual art, also referred to as conceptualism, is art in which the concepts or ideas involved in the work are prioritized equally to or more than traditional aesthetic, technical, and material concerns. So instead of making something like beautiful or making it complicated or making it, I don't know, whatever, like you're trying to make it conceptually interesting. Okay, some works of conceptual art may be constructed by anyone simply by following a set of written instructions. Okay, so why it goes immediately there, but what did it make me think of? Conceptual art. Oh, right. This should have a Wikipedia page, but it doesn't. So, but I mean, right over here, like the Joint Chiefs of Staff has concepts. There's a new joint warfighting concept coming, and then there's like, I've seen people talk about this. You know, systems destruction warfare, like the idea that systems confrontation and destruction warfare, and system destruction warfare, like, is this a concept of operations? I'm not sure if this counts as a concept of operations. Like, does warfighting concept appear? Hello. Current methods of methods of warfighting are connected to warfighting concepts, because you need to understand there's something called a concept. There's a concept of operation. So a concept of operations is not just like a concept, like I don't know, like a concept of a unicorn, right? Like there's no real unicorn or whatever, but a lot of things, like you can draw a unicorn and you can imagine a unicorn because it's such an established concept, right? Or the concept of the number 2, right? Or the concept of Zeus or Superman or whatever. Like there are concepts, right? But then you can have philosophical concepts, right? Which are already closer to concept of operations, right? Like if you have the concept of, I mean, like in situationism, for example, you have the concept of the derive. If I can open a thing here. So, you know, you have the concept of the derive. So the derive is like a concept. It's just like, you know, a word has a meaning and, you know, it's utilizing a thing, but it's also a practice. In particular, a derive by the situationist is basically you walk around, but you like explore the terrain in a whole new way, on a journey through a landscape. You know, you don't walk on the sidewalk, man. You know, you like go down the back alley, like you stop and smell the road. You like, you know, look at the things that you wouldn't look at before, right? All this sort of stuff. It's just like exploring the world in a new way. And that, in a way, is a concept of operations, even though it's also the antithesis of a concept of operations. Like a derive is the concept to basically not have a concept, but it's still a certain kind of concept. But these videos that I'm doing are sort of like a derive of the internet or whatever, right? Like I'm just, anyway, not exactly. Like this is not exactly planned, but I've been in gestating. Anyway, concept of operations. Going back to you know, again, this idea of conceptualization. Like Zweibelson is basically saying, like, it's a problem that we can't conceptualize fast enough because the computers are changing so fast. So, like, the process by which we are gearing up to be able to adapt faster and faster. It's like we're it makes to build out of the elements within the legacy system that we're inheriting that are the most dynamic, basically. So within that makes the Hegelian e-girl thing make more sense, because it's like, again, you're going back to Hegel, right? It's in a way like everybody's constantly back to Karl von Clausewitz. And of course, they lived around the same time, which is interesting. But I'm trying to just bring up the